All right, let's keep that energy up. ETHDenver, thank you for hanging around the main stage today. Next up, we have a great panel conversation. It's going to be led by Robbie Klages, co-founder of the Rollup. It's called Beyond NFTs, the bull case for on-chain IP. Please give our speakers a round of applause.
GM. What's up, guys? Last day of ETHDenver. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to have some fun talking about IP. I like to think of IP on-chain almost as a natural progression of NFTs. Generally, when you guys are thinking about this progression, this evolution from IP early on to IP nowadays, do you guys see it the same way? What is the right mental model for us to think about IP on-chain?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. For one, I'd like someone to come up with a new name for NFTs because it's an extremely valuable thing, but a lot of people, a lot of important, smart people, they just have a bit of a sense of trauma around it, especially in worlds outside of crypto. But I think NFTs really just means that it's a moment on the blockchain. And when it comes to actual AI models that are creating something in which the inference is verified on the blockchain, it's a bit more powerful than what we saw within NFTs before in 2021. Like, you don't know if someone painted something, you don't know if someone could have made it in Photoshop, and then they just went on OpenSea and they clicked that button meant. I think now AI needs a bit more IP.
Yeah, you can see how that leads to some NFT PTSD. And that's just one of the many forms of IP on-chain. And so we've got plenty of speakers on this panel here that are doing things, not just NFTs, but many, many forms of IP on-chain. Maybe you guys can illuminate some examples here too, how we can bring IP on-chain beyond NFTs.
I'll give a little spiel on VFriends and the context on VFriends. I think VFriends is a really interesting example of how IP is evolving and evolving with our collectors. The first version of VFriends Series 1 were actually doodles by the creator and founder, and then VFriends Series 2 were animated, colored, fully personal designed versions of those characters. If you minted a VFriends Series 2 NFT, you got a collectible trading card box. That trading card box is now on the secondary market on eBay, it's on live shopping on whatnot, and people are being introduced to VFriends for the first time in trading card form, which is then leading them back to on-chain.
For me, I was born and raised in Japan with a lot of different IPs in Asia, and the thing that I noticed was the past decades of living, there weren't that many new IP that came out that went global. And I think the reason has been that a lot of that publisher and distribution has been controlled by and powered by a lot of the huge international companies. And when I saw IP start happening on crypto and on blockchain, it's a lifetime opportunity to bring new IP to consumer directly to your own fans and community. And I think that started happening with CryptoKitties and X Infinity. When we were first invested in XT, we thought, oh, this is an interesting game. But then the behind the scene being on blockchain was that it was first time that you could launch something with small budget and go global to have everyone know the new IP and characters. And I think that inspired a lot of people on blockchain and also in different media industry and entertainment to think about maybe we can do something more in blockchain than traditional media.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes we forget that the best real use cases of the blockchain is the fact that it is a ledger technology. You can see a history of all that is created there. And also it's easier to transact. You don't have to go through certain firms or certain studios that take a large cut. But I think it's specifically interesting when it comes to, like we're saying, things generated with AI. Because at this point, like my boomer parents, they love making shit on Midjourney and sending it to me. And like in theory, they're proud, but they can't actually show it's them that made it. Whereas with the blockchain, the ability to actually give royalties, give provenance, create a form of monetization, not just for the person that's doing the text to prompt or the person that created the actual open source model, but even the people that are contributing data to that. And I think it's much bigger than just like the typical artistic NFTs we've seen in the past. It also will extend eventually to pharmaceutical companies, architecture firms. All industries, I think, need a sense of IP, given that AI models just don't necessarily give us that confidence without what the blockchain does.
I think this will be a good segue. I think I think the first time I ever heard NFT was actually through Top Shot. And Top Shot had such a big moment because it's a collectible, and people love collecting cards, and using the IP of the NBA had a real moment in time. And I think for VFriends and how we think about VFriends is through collectability, and that collecting as a genre is only going to continue to grow. Like when you're sitting around a dinner table, people talk about movies, music, sports. I think the question of what do you collect will be a more and more common question as we hang around the dinner tables.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, digital collecting is just collecting, but it's easier. It's on your phone. You can carry your whole collection around everywhere, show it off like your social media profile. But the funny thing is, with Top Shot, initially, the word NFT wasn't anywhere in the user experience, anywhere on the website. And even with CryptoKitties, when we wrote the non-fungible token standard, and Dieter asked me, hey, should we just call it an NFT? I didn't even think about it, because we assumed, it's like MP3, you just say music, right? You don't say MP4, you just say a video. And so that's where that digital collectibles thing comes in. Every sports conference now has a digital collectibles panel, and they just assume, hey, digital collecting is going to become part of a sports fan's life cycle, just like physical collecting was. And eventually, just like e-commerce is just commerce, digital collecting is just collecting. But in fact, e-commerce became bigger than commerce, and same thing with this. So the word NFT, maybe next ETHDenver we still talk about it, but 2-3 ETHDenvers from now, hopefully we're just talking about the forms of IP and the forms of content and the user experiences that people are engaging in, not kind of, is it an NFT or not? Which I agree, for consumers, it's a little bit of association with price movement and this kind of thing.
Yeah, it's just an issue of branding and rhetoric. I totally agree with both of you guys that collectibles is really important for extremely loyal, dedicated communities that find something to be a part of their identity. But I think in some ways, paying for a collectible of just an experience you partake in, like in the case of music NFTs, I'm bullish on music NFTs now, super bearish back in the day. Because like I listen to Kendrick sometime, but like I pay $12 to Spotify a month. Like, why the fuck do I need to buy an NFT so that I can like just show some people like, yeah, I do like Kendrick, just so you know?
Well, the most popular NFTs like the most highest quantity number of NFTs by a single project is probably Ticketmaster. About 100 million, almost 100 million have been issued. A lot of them to music fans, some sports fans, but they don't think of it as an NFT. It's just a digital ticket stub. And most of them have no value, but the next Justin Bieber, his first Justin Bieber concert, if he's got that digital ticket stub, that thing's gonna have value, which is how collectibles and collecting kind of works. So it's just stuff, but then it turns into collectibles.
Yeah, I got you. I think like in terms of loyal communities, crypto does a great job of that as well, because financial interests and ideologies are aligned. But same as like the really successful communities that offer collectibles.
When you put IP on chain, you also have the collectibles, but then it's on chain, so you can do rewards, loyalty programs, VFriends. We've thrown a conference for the last 3 years, VCon, and those tickets are actually collectible tickets on chain too, and it's just a really fun way to engage your fans and your community.
I think something interesting is, a lot of us here has been mentioning about like collection and how exclusive community it can create.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting about blockchain, IP on blockchain, is that it also creates infinite derivatives to happen in a safer and manageable way. And Jessica was mentioning a bit about AI earlier, but with AI coming, a lot of the graphics and the design, even the narratives are created by AI. And sometimes these are maybe starting from IP initial inspiration from CryptoKitty, Top Shot, or VFriends. And that could go on and be really infinite variation. Where are you gonna put it? How are you gonna control that? How are you gonna control the incentives of who contributed what inspiration? And I think that really created an interesting opening moment for the IP industry to think about not just monetizing with all the crypto bros investing in it, but actually we can create something new for whole media and IP space as well.
Yeah, so that's actually what I'm working on now, a project called 7007. So it's an extension to ERC 721, which is an NFT. We recently got our proposal passed by the Ethereum Foundation that when using an AI-generated content model on chain, you receive an asset that looks like an ERC 721, but is denoted as AI. And like you pointed out, the incentives are somewhat misaligned with AI at this point when it comes to artists and creators, because not all of them are actually developing the AI models. But that's, I think, the one problem that blockchain solves quite well, is being able to showcase who the contributors are and having a kind of immediate payout to some of those contributors upon sale.
Yeah, 100%. I like to think about this as an idea economy. And AI is great to weave in here. We had social media that lowered the cost of distribution, essentially commoditized it. AI is now doing the same thing to creation. Then we have blockchain that is doing the same thing to the coordination of these ideas. So we can now measure and graph this idea economy by putting it on a ledger. So the question is, where's the moat? Where is the real value? If all of these other adjacents are being commoditized, what do you guys think provides the real value when it comes to an IP brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say a lot of the moat comes from the data that's actually training the AI model. Not everyone wants to give that up. For example, with 7007, we're currently working on a deal with the Basquiat Foundation, in which we could use an AI model trained with Basquiat art. However, that then requires royalties to the people running that foundation, which I think is actually a good thing. But I'd say that's the moat. Just the legality of to what extent is something that a person created really able to be fed into a model to make something similar if that person isn't getting any additional value out of it.
We talk a lot about at VFriends that life is an and game. It's not just digital collectibles, it's physical collectibles. If you're not doing Web 2 and blockchain and AI and digital and physical collectibles, you're not setting yourself up to be a contemporary modern IP.
But I think the moat is what the moat has always been, which is engaged users. If you have a community that is coming to your product and you have those eyeballs, the fact that everything else is commoditized actually means more and more utility and usefulness for your community. A big focus for us now that, so Flow is now fully EVM equivalent, which means anybody can build on top of the IP that we build and that we license and we bring from NBA, NFL, Disney, et cetera. And I think that we have the users, but others can build different utility for them. And at the end of the day, rising tide lifts all the boats. So despite there not being kind of this, and in fact, moats as a concept, if you didn't have moats, that means that the consumer and producer surplus is being fully sort of allocated to the creators and the consumers rather than these large middlemen platforms that are kind of essentially using the creator content, using the IP to get those network effects, and then charging all parties, abusing the data, disintermediating the creator from their own community. And that movie's been happening on the internet for 2 decades now, and so I think crypto can fix that as well.
Yeah, I think the moat here, before the panel, I was asking Andy about what's the demographic of VFriends. And I think key thing that blockchain does really well is storing data. And it's not just storing IP, but actually the behavior of those IPs, which is something that a lot of the IP publishers could not really have raw data of direct. You could do a lot of different research to get idea of that. But then in blockchain, you have absolute behavioral data of a lot of different NFTs, transactions, which is something new that's happening. And that will circle back to bringing it back as a value or experience to the fans and community in a different way that wasn't possible before.
Yeah, so the blockchain is great at storing that data. Also now, once it's on chain, it's also programmable. There's a big push in programmable IP as well. I want to zoom out a little bit and switch gears because last month or so we've got a new regime that's come in the U.S. and these guys are really referring to things on chain, tokens, NFTs as truly what they seem to be, which is collectibles, right? So how friendly do you guys think this regime is going to be? If you were in their seat, what kind of laws and regulations would you put in place to carve out the right alley for this particular sector?
I mean, I think of it as a green light on almost every product idea we've ever had. So as a builder, it's very, very exciting. And I think for our community, it's going to be exciting because it just means, we can, at the end of the day, it means more individual responsibility. I've always been, as we talked a little bit backstage, a little bit of a, I believe in individual responsibility. I believe we have there's so much data out there, and each of you guys has multiple AI agents that you can use to sort of interpret and filter through that data. So why do you need somebody else, or rather 5, 6 layers of representatives and unelected and elected officials and all this stuff determining what you can and cannot do? This is basically my philosophy.
Last few years have sucked. We don't know what we can or can't do, and I think everyone's optimistic that hopefully we'll get some rules of the road and we can pave forward and really innovate.
And I think the best thing about IP is a cultural movement. So when it happens, you can't really stop it. So I think regardless, it's going to be happening and accelerating.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to kind of pick your guys' brains on kind of like a market survey type of question where you're going out and you're talking to these traditional conglomerates that have massive IPs and massive brands. What are some of the questions that they have when you talk to them about the value proposition of bringing their IP on chain? What are some of the questions that they ask you to fully understand the value proposition of blockchain?
Yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, besides 7007, I also advise the UFC project that the festive gentleman before was up here on. I think it's a bit interesting because it's not as if they're necessarily aggressive in terms of their questioning. They're just like learning together with us. They want to expand their community too, and they realize, like all of y'all are saying, that collectibles genuinely have been a good way to raise community. So I would say that brands are just still learning. They're not necessarily antagonistic yet.
I mean, from my perspective, the main thing they want is just to be where their customers are. And from a brand perspective, they don't necessarily think of it as putting the IP on chain, but they think of it as, hey, our IP is what happens on the court or what happens on the field, and we want it to be everywhere. If people want to watch it on traditional set-top media, they can do that. If they want to collect it in cardboard cards, if they want to collect it in a digital format. But then what gets them really excited, I mean, we, in our product, have the video rights, and we're selling them as kind of these permanent collectibles to the community. And our partners would have never been bought in on it had it not been on blockchain and decentralized. Because if we were a large gaming company like EA or a social platform like Meta, sure, we can license the video, but we can't sell it to the customer as a permanent marker of hey, you own this thing. Because that asset actually lives inside the servers of that one company. And so forever, the NBA or NFL or whoever it is would be basically tied at the hips to that company. So from their perspective, hey, we can rent out our assets. You can rent our assets all these places. But if you want to own something that's branded of our product, you're either buying it physically or buying it on sort of secured by the blockchain. Very early on, we kind of almost talked to them about it as an advanced form of digital right management, DRM. Those of you that are old enough remember early days of like, hey, figuring out how to stream music on the internet. It was, before these sort of streaming services was about, hey, I'm a creator, I'm putting out a piece of content, but that content has controls on it. And so you can't, send it here and there. And, blockchain is basically making that so plug and play. Is that, yeah, you can sell it if you want. We're taking our royalty, we're taking our piece of it, and so kind of aligned incentives. So from our perspective, it's kind of like it's a given that they're going to have this in their kind of portfolio, and it's a question of how do you make it good for the customer. But the point of beyond NFTs, now you're seeing, a lot of different kinds of individuals and entities putting out non-NFT tokens or fungible tokens, meme coins, et cetera. That's also getting everybody to ask, well, how do I do this in a way that's good for my community? Because if I'm an artist or a big brand, there's actually no way to launch a meme coin in a way that's actually good for my community. I can launch it on, Pump Fun, et cetera, but then we all know what it's going to do. And so that kind of mechanism of how do you just use this technology to engage your community is, I think, the most important thing. And blending fungible, non-fungible, all these different pieces of technology to kind of make people happy, make people have fun.
Yeah, I mean, I've been running a crypto venture fund for last 8 years, and most of our investors in our fund are public companies in Asia and US where they run entertainment, gaming, and consumer services. And in the early days, a lot of the question on NFT and blockchain was, I think, a bit narrow on monetization. And I think the idea were more narrowed in terms of more of a project than a new business. It was more event that they wanted to do because blockchain is kind of hot or it seems innovative. So it was more of a marketing. But now I think they're starting to think more long term as a kind of a continuation, thinking more about how do we make sustainable community or NFT within their brand. And I think not many people in crypto realize that we are probably one of the most attractive consumer base, being very active, international, on the internet all the time, and probably high buying power, and ready to try all different weird stuff. It's one of the most attractive consumer segment that you can target as an international company or even startup. So I think companies are also realizing that this can actually lead to accessing new type of demographic, new consumer base, or even going to new country as an expansion plan through blockchain or NFT as an asset.
Totally. But just to take a bit of a controversial stance, I agree with you. A lot of what happens on Pump.fun or the current AI agent platforms today even, they're usually they go up, they go down. But what are the tokens that those people use that they bought for that AI agent? What does it do for them? Nothing. It just lines their pocket with money or they lose the money. Whereas I think now that agents are becoming more sophisticated, Web3 is a little bit behind on how good the agents are that don't have shitcoins attached to them. I think that it's very possible that Web3 could start to launch actual agents that have genuine utility, and the token is a way to actually access that form of utility. Better trading agents, community management agents, etc.
I agree with your controversial take. I think verifiable AI, programmable AI, and generally AI and IP on chain will open up this new set of use cases that are not possible on traditional centralized AI. And I'm very, very excited to see all of those new use cases. One consistency that I hear between kind of everyone on this panel is the idea of a on-chain IP company basically being a traditional collectibles business, right? So
or gaming, yeah.
Or gaming. Yeah, so a lot of times people in crypto, and I think you kind of hit on this, is that we get so dug deep into our echo chamber that we forget about all of the existing work and history in these businesses that we're built on top of. So what are some lessons from the traditional collectibles businesses that we can apply in on-chain IP and collectibles businesses?
That's a good question. I mean, just ironically speaking, all this stuff is so new, so I'd say just get the stuff shipped immediately before there's a law that you've now broken. But I don't think that's actually what is going to happen. I think everyone recognizes the innovation that AI is creating for us and the fact that there's more than one creator within an AI model, essentially. The person that does the text prompt, people that built the AI model, people that trained it with data. I just feel that the actual regulation around it is going to evolve in a way that does stimulate innovation.
I would just say, if you're going to build a collectibles company, whether digital or physical, you have to think long term. And long term is maybe not always the best or most favorite word in crypto, but that's how you have to think about it from my perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about whatnot, in the back, which makes total sense that collectibles businesses are using that. On-chain collectibles ought to use that as well. Guys, we got 30 seconds left. We'll just keep it lighthearted. I want to hear, what is your favorite NFT collection, and why do you think it's going to survive, or not?
VFriends is my favorite NFT collection. Go figure. Shout out VFriends. It's gonna survive because we got passionate community character maxis that love this collectibles IP, and we have quite the founder in Gary Vaynerchuk, and we have a really good team around us.
And for me, it's the UFC Strike collection. The UFC fans are actually very, very into the UFC, and those NFTs are still selling right now.
Yeah, I gotta say CryptoKitties, but we gotta get Gary back into Top Shot too.
Yeah.
I have my own that oil painted and then made it into NFT that's private. Never sold it, but that's my favorite that I made.
That's cool.
All right, shout out Pudgy Penguins. Cheers, guys. Thanks to everyone on our panel. Give them a big round of applause.
And thanks, you guys.